Alright peeps, so here we are back again in Logic, and let's start off with the mixing section. To start off, what I like to do is that I do all of the routings correctly because it helps me better mix all of the instruments. So as you can see in the drum section, you have a couple of elements which are directly going to the drum bus, and there are few sections which are going to a separate group which is again going to a drum bus. I had discussed this in detail in my drum section video, in which I explained the processing, the routing, and why I like to group all of the hats in a different hat FX bus and process it there instead of doing individually. So you can go ahead and check that out if you haven't already. I have an iCard above, or the links are down in the description box below. Rest, the instruments are pretty simple. All of the instruments are going to stereo out, apart from the ambiences, which are grouped again to an ambience bus, which I'm again doing the post processing. Now that we have all of the post processing done individually for all of the instruments, what I like to do is I like all of the pannings to be done correctly. In this case, I have a drum section in which the panning is pretty evident. For the close hats, I have panned it wee bit to the left. The accents hats are also on to the left. The accent hat, second accent hat is to the right. The shakers is to the right, and the Foley recordings are both panned to the left and the right respectively. Next, I have a piano motif which is panned to the right, and I have some melodics which are the pluck sounds that we created panned to the left. Again, I have a guitar section which is again panned to the left, and then everything else is pretty much dead center. Something to notice that I also mentioned in my bass section, that I like to keep the bass pretty mono, so that's why I have a gain plugin over here, and I have activated the mono channel, so the bass is setting dead center, it's not stereo. Because in my bass design video and in Reese basses, you use multiple voices and then you detune them, so you have a stereo information in your own track, so you don't want that for the bass, so that's why I like to keep the bass dead center. But if you're gunning for that kind of vibe and you want a stereo bass, you can as well disable it. So there's one more thing that I like to do before I go into the mixing session, is that I keep all of the channels as a pre-fader metering. Now this helps me gauge the gain of individual instruments separately, and if you do it post meter, all of the effects and the processing that you do goes to the fader, and then it goes to the metering, so you don't have a correct representations of the gain the individual instrument is throwing. So you might be clipping, but the meter would show that you're not. So it's better to have a pre-fader metering so that you can know individual tracks which are clipping, and you can go and fix them individually. Now there are no set rules for mixing. You can go ahead and adjust the levels according to your taste and personal preference. And there are two major ways on how I go about mixing. One is using the pink noise and using my ear. And the most trusted and recommended way is to use your ear, because at the end of the day, we are music producers and we are in the business of making music. So you have to have some kind of trust and rely on your ear. But having said that, using a ping noise will definitely get you started if you're new, or if you are even experienced and if you want that quick setup, or if you have too many instruments in the mix and you just are not able to mix all of the instruments at once. So it gets a good reference point from where you can then go ahead and tweak it. So how I start going about the mixing process is that I bring down all of the levels of the instruments, keeping the stereo and the master out obviously at 0. And then I loop a section of the track where all of the instruments are playing, so that you have a better understanding of all of the mix. And then I start introducing one element at a time. Let's start off with the drums, and let me bring the drum bus to 0 because otherwise you won't hear those individual instruments. And let's start off with the kick, snare, accent hats, and then the rest of the instruments. So I think minus 12 dB is the gain, and the level is around minus 3.9 dBs. That should be fine for now. Let's introduce the snare and the accent snares. I think somewhere around there is fine. Now I don't want the accent snare to kind of pop out, so let me just keep that in the background. That should be fine. Let's introduce the hat section. And for that, I need to bring the hat FX bus to 0. That's fine. Okay. Okay. So if I increase this to about, let's say, -10, it's gonna be popping out, and I don't want that. The open hat should be somewhere around here. That's fine. As you can notice, do notice that the gains are pretty much level at -12 dB, and this is because you need headroom for the master chain, and I'll tell you when we are going into the mastering section. I want both the folays to kind of set at the same level. So let me just bring it to 9.6. It's too much, I guess. Okay, that should be fine. Great, so now we have the drums leveled for now. In the context of the song, we might have to adjust here and there. But let's go ahead and introduce the respace. Not too much. That's fine. Let's introduce the neuro growl basses. These are in certain sections of the song. That's fine. Great. Now I like to introduce the pads, so to fill up the atmosphere and give it that stereo image. So how I go about this is that I kind of punch the pads to 0, and then I start bringing it down just a wee bit. The raise base is 2 on the phase. Let me just kind of level it down. That should be fine. Let's see how the piano kind of... And these are the piano chords and a little bit of motif. So I want those piano motifs to kind of pop out in the mix. So let's see. Somewhere around here is nice, I guess. If I increase that, it's too much. Okay. This is fine. So now let's see the piano motifs, the single notes. I think it will come after the spa. Okay, it's a little too much. Okay, I think let's see now. Okay. So it's so as you can notice that the piano motifs have delay and reverb into it. I've sent the reverb through the send channel. So let's introduce that slowly. I want that to kind of sit in the background, and as you can see, it's panned a wee bit to the right. Okay. I think here it's fine. Let's check the melodics now. It's a little less. is fine. Not too much, just sitting in the background. Now let's introduce the violin. This is gonna kind of over explode everything. This is somewhere kind of mellow, it's kind of flowing, smoothing in and out from the pad section and the piano section. Now let's bring in the vocal chops, and do notice that we had kind of dropped all of the levels down for the aux channel as well, and for the vocal chops we have delays and reverb sent to the aux channel. So let's bring that up for now. And by the way, I have kept all of the sends channel, which has reverb and delays, to 0, and I mix all of the reverbs and the delays through the send levels over here. You can do that alternatively, you can set this to 0 and then kind of mix it, but I like to do this way, and a mix of both can also work. So let's bring in the vocal chops now, and let's see how it's mixing with the mix. Do notice we have to keep the vocals back. Okay, the reverb is too high for the vocals, so it's kind of like ringing to eternity. As you can see here, it's still going on. So let's bring both the delays and the reverb just a tiny bit. And also I can hear some crackling sound from the Foley's. It's coming too much. Let me just select the filter and cut off the highs a bit so that we don't have that crackling sound in the mix. Here is fine, I guess. Let's see. Setting well, it's not sounding like if it's clipping. It was earlier sounding like the whole song was clipping and because of something, but I kind of noticed that it was because of the Foley and we have not filtered it quite well. And that's what I've been telling in my previous videos, that making use of bandpass filters in your Foleys and your hat effect section can drastically change your mix. And that only depends when you're in the mixing process and you start to hear some nuances here and there. You can go ahead and check that. So I'm happy with the levels of the reverb and the delay over here. Let's bring the level of the vocal chops up. It's still fine now. So this is the transition between the drums, and let me just bring in Angel in the mix. So if I increase the transition a lot, it's gonna sound really bad. So you just need a tad bit, just in the background. Somewhere around here is nice. By the way, if you're wondering how the transitions were made, these are two samples of cymbals, and I have reversed one of them and I've kind of joined it, so you have that reverse transition effect. So the key is to keep the transitions to the minimum but mellow in the background. So let's hear the guitars now. So let's bring this down. somewhere around -3.5 is fine. Now let's add in the ambiences, which are the rains and the vinyl, and I'm keeping this to 0 because this is a ambience bus, and we'll blend in the rain and the vinyl crackle wee bit. So let's just solo out first. Okay. It's too much. Now you can bring in the rain pretty high, because if you want that kind of vibe, you want the element to stand out, you can bring up. But I feel all of the ambiences should be in the back, and it's pretty mellow in the background. But if you gotta also notice and keep in mind that once you're playing the mixes on your phone speakers or your normal headphones, these middle frequencies instruments will pop out a lot, and you will essentially ruin the mix. Just a subtle introduction of the ambiences. That's about fine. And we are done with the mixing process. One last thing before we go into mastering is that I like to hear the whole song with the current mix, and then I go into the mixer and tweak here and there, because you need that level throughout the song. We just looped one section of the song and then we did the mixing, but you need kind of the level to sit well in the mix throughout the whole song, because you have songs which have quiet parts, loud parts, so you need all of the levels to sit perfectly. So let's hear it once again. So right off the bat I can see that the vinyl crackle is too much. Pads are nice, I guess. Pianos are also fine. The bass is sounding really nice in this mix. Let's increase it and bring it down. It was at 12.4. Now. I think this is fine. The hats are also sounding nice. Let's not play around with the levels here. So the open hat is kind of sounding really irritating. Let's bring it down. Let's bring up the violin a bit. Guitar is also nice. Open hats are coming a lot. Just bring that down. That's about fine. Piano motifs are also sounding nice. think I'm fine with it. So before we move into the mastering chain, do notice in the stereo channel, you can see the peak level at about -7 dB over here. And that is just the correct headroom that you want for the mastering stage. You want somewhere around -6 to -7 to -7.5 dB. That's the perfect peak level for your song to go into the mastering stage. Because if you're clipping to about -2 dB, -3 dB, once you go into the mastering stage, you're gonna clip and the whole mix will be ruined. So that's the perfect mix level that you can achieve. And this is just because you have gain staged all of the instruments properly to about -12 dB, like I had discussed in my previous videos. Then all of the instruments should peak around -12 to -10 dB. Now let's jump into the mastering process. And you do all of the mastering on the stereo channel. And before we do that, I kind of loop a section of the song where you have the loudest parts and you have all of the instruments playing in the mix. So I have identified this section over here, which has all of the instruments. I have the pads, the pianos, the guitars, the ambiances, and the reese basses, the growls, and all of the drums. So first up in my mastering chain is a correlation meter, and this just helps me better visualize whether my mix is going to sound good in both stereo and mono speakers. So if this line drifts to the positive side, most of the time, that means you're good to go. So I've kept my stereo output mute for now. This is just to check whether it's kind of sitting well. So I can see it's kind of going both in mono because we had some instruments which were dead center, which was reese, basses, and kick. And most of the time it's kind of hovering over here. So it's pretty fine with the stereo speakers as well. Next, I have a linear EQ, and this is just to kind of cut all of the lows one last time, just a tad bit, and bring some air to the whole overall mix. So let's just unmute the stereo output and let's A/B this. Difference is pretty subtle, but it just gives that last bit of air and brightness to the overall mix. And linear EQ is something which eats up a lot of CPU and it has much more processing involved in the overall mix. Next, I have a multi-band compressor, and you have to be very judicious with it and just experiment as much as you can. Earlier, I remember when I used to play around with multi-band compressor, I used to just boost everything up because it never used to sound nice in my phone speakers and my normal headphones. And when I used to hear it on my monitors and my stereo monitors, my headphone monitors, it used to sound crappy as hell. So you got to be very judicious with it. Just a tad bit can bring out a lot of difference. And this is just a multi-band compressor. That means you have a certain band being compressed individually. So over here, the first band is up till, let's say, about 175, 185, 160 hertz, sorry. The second band is around 1100 hertz. The third band ends at 7500 hertz. And the last band ends at 20k hertz. And this is just a visual way to kind of change the gains and the compression. You can do that with here as well, and you can change the threshold, the ratios, and the peak RMS, the attack time, the release time. So I usually keep the attack time and release time constant with all of the sections, and then I kind of start playing around with it. So let's A/B this and let's hear it. So as you can hear, just the kicks are sounding more punchy in the mix. The mids, which were a little muddy, have reduced a lot. Cool. Next up, I have a saturation. And this is just a tad bit. This is just to give some harmonic content which we lost during the mixing process because we've used a lot of compressors in a lot of channels, and also we've used a lot of filters, band pass filters, low pass filters in all of the instruments. So this I like to use in the mastering section just to bring out much more harmonic contents, just a tad bit, because if you're going to increase it, the overall value of the production kind of decreases. That's how I feel. Let's A/B this and let's hear it. I'm gonna crank this up so you can see it's clipping. So just a tad bit is what you want. So next I have a creamer tape, and this is optional completely. If you want that kind of tape noise in your overall mix, you can introduce that. If you don't, it's completely fine. And this is just how it sounds. Let me just unmute the whole track. And that's just a tape noise that is going in the background throughout the mix. And you can increase the wow and flutter, or you can reduce it, and you can decrease the noise or increase it. And there are many other parameters that you can play around with: the recording level, the playback level, if you want to increase it. That's about it. But this is optional. It just gives and brings out that character of the old age recording, the analog recording tapes that you used to do. So the next couple of plugins go hand in hand, and these are adapter limiter, a multimeter, a loudness metering tool, and a level meter. So I kind of keep them open over here, and so that I have them on my screen and I'm able to monitor everything. And this is where you start to make your whole track audible for your audio streaming platforms. Now there is something called as LUFS, which is LUFS, you can call it LUFS, which is loudness unit full scale. And these are defined set loudness levels by the streaming platforms that you need to export your song in, and you have to upload them. Because every mix is different, and a lot of mix engineers go through various gain staging, you have to have a uniform level of loudness of your tracks for all of the streaming platforms. And that is where LUFS comes in. For example, Spotify has about minus 14 dB as LUFS. SoundCloud and YouTube, I think it's about minus 15, minus 16. I'm not too sure. Don't quote me on that, but it's somewhere around that. So in this section, what you start to do is that you start to increase the gain of the overall song so that it matches the LUFS for the streaming platforms. So how I go about this is that I kind of keep my outer ceiling at minus 1 dB, and this is why, because Spotify and other streaming platforms have given a set parameter in which you need to export your WAV files, which is minus 14 dB LUFS, and your peak should be around minus 1 dB. So look ahead is about 25 milliseconds, and this parameter defines how far ahead the adapter limiter should look into your mix so that it can bring in and then start acting on it. So 25 milliseconds is right about fine. You can go ahead with 30 milliseconds or more, but I think 25 is fine. And then I reduce the gain to 0, and then I start increasing, and I start seeing the integrated LUFS. And what I like to do personally is that I like to export the songs at about, let's say, minus 12 dB, minus 11 dB. Because Spotify has, and all of the other streaming platforms like Apple Music and others, have a normalization process. And if you kind of give your track below 14 dB, it's going to normalize it and bring your levels up. And that can clip your overall song and the true dynamics that you have kind of set in your mix. So it's better to give your song a couple of dBs higher than the minus 14 dB range, so that when it normalizes, it can just bring down the level, and the dynamic information and the mixing information that you have done remains intact. So let's go ahead and check whether the true peak is clipping at -1 dB. The LUFS is around -14, -10 for that matter, -11. And let's bring in the gain slowly and gradually. By the way, multimeter is just a visual representation of how your mix is sounding, and it's an analyzer, it's a frequency analyzer, so that you can see overall what all frequencies are kind of boosting, and you can go ahead individually to a track and then kind of bring them down so that you have a level frequency spectrum. So let's go ahead and check it. Let me unmute it. How I do this is that once you increase the gain, you gotta reset it again so that it kind of resets and comes back again. And this might sound a little harsh to you, so let me just bring the levels just a tad bit so that it doesn't clip in your ears. So at about 12 dB, I am going and clipping at about -12. So let me just bring that down to -11.5, and I think I should be fine with -13 dB of integrated LUFS. Let's reset it once again and check. So that's about fine. So let's A/B all of these and let's see what difference did it bring. So there you have it. That's how I go about the mastering process for the Future Garage track. Now you can go ahead and copy the parameters that I've shown you. It would give you some kind of result, but it would not give you the desired result that you want, because every individual is different. And I would recommend that you trust your ear and experiment as much as you can with all of these plugins and see what vibe do you want to fix with your own music. But that's the basic of how I go about the mixing process and the mastering section. A bonus tip I would say is that once you're doing the mixing process, I would highly recommend you taking about 5 to 10 minute break before you jump into the mastering process, because our ears are so intricate organs that it gets tuned to the sound on an extended period of time, and then it kind of starts playing tricks to your brain, and the frequencies that you think you are hearing might not be there. And then you go back and forth with your headphones and your monitors. And if you don't have monitors, that's completely fine. I have done an entire album just on these. I didn't have any studio monitors, so it's pretty okay if you don't own one. Also, I would suggest that you export these tracks and listen to them on your mobile phones, your Bluetooth speakers, your home speakers, or your car speakers to better understand your mix, because a lot of the songs that our audiences would be hearing will not be heard on monitors like these, your headphones like these, or studio monitors. They would be heard on normal day earphones, and those earphones have a very, how would I put it subtly, not so good frequency response. So you need the mix to sound level in all of the speakers. So it's better to kind of export the final mix that you have and listen to it on your normal day headphones and speakers, and then come back again and do the mixing and mastering again. Okay guys, that was the end of the Future Garage music production series. I hope you learned something from this. Do let me know in the comments down below, and if you have created your own track, link them down below and I'll be happy to hear them. As always, if you like what I do here, support the channel by subscribing, give me a thumbs up, hit the notification bell so that you can stay updated. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below and I'll be happy to get back to you. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Till then, cheers.